part. You know that word traitor? Have you ever, I'm sure you've never used it. I'm sure you've never thought about calling someone a traitor. I'm sure you've never uttered those words, betrayer. I'm sure it's never crossed your lips, but you know, if someone from Birmingham City Football Club, if they signed for Aston Villa Football Club, you can guarantee that the chant from the stands would be, Judas, traitor. It's bound to happen, isn't it? And, you know, maybe you've been working for a company. Maybe you've been headhunted by another company that do similar business, and you could be known as, if you jump ship, a traitor, a someone who betrays. You know, that word, it just conjures up images and thoughts in your mind. It can't help but do that, can it? The word traitor, it just suddenly, in your mind's eye, you see things and they're of a negative connotation. And Judas Iscariot, we've seen him, he gets a bad rap, doesn't he? Because when we think of Judas, we just think of a villain. He's the villain in this story. He's the baddie. And he's lurking in the shadows, so to speak. But you know what? That is not the reality of Judas. It's not the reality of it. Because Judas was trusted. Judas was respected. Judas was chosen by Jesus himself to be part of the chosen few, the inner circle, the guys that would emerge to form what we call now today the church. And there's Judas. Judas, a respected man, a man who was following Jesus for 3 years, did life with Jesus, saw the good, the bad, the ugly, saw what was going on, heard everything, was taught by Jesus, was inspired by Jesus, was motivated by Jesus. He loved Jesus. There's Judas. But something shifted in a moment. And that moment is on the screen. It's recorded by Matthew, one of the disciples, in his 26th chapter in the gospel. You can read it if you want. But this is the moment when everything shifted for Judas. When the respected, the chosen person, the person of Judas who loved Jesus, this is the moment it all shifted for him. Let's read it for a moment. It says, while Jesus was in Bethany in the home of Simon the leper, a woman came to him with an alabaster jar of very expensive perfume, which she poured on his head, and he was reclining at the table. When the disciples saw this, they were indignant. Why this waste, they asked. This perfume could have been sold at a high price and the money given to the poor. You see, you need to know, in this culture, in this setting, in this part of history, when you walked into a person's home, you weren't asked, oh, would you like a cup of tea? Do you want a couple of biscuits? No, you came in and your feet were washed, because you were bringing in dirt and sand and dust from the roads that weren't tarmacked. And so your feet were washed. And here is Jesus at the house. And here suddenly, instead of his feet being washed with water, a woman comes and she has got this jar of really expensive perfume. And she breaks it and she begins to wash Jesus' feet with the perfume. And Judas thinks, what an absolute waste. Let's carry on. It says this. He says, then one of the 12, the one called Judas Iscariot, went to the chief priests and asks, what are you willing to give me if I deliver him over to you? So they counted out for him 30 pieces of silver. And from then on, Judas watched for an opportune moment to hand him over. There is the moment that it shifted for Judas. That's the moment it all changed. Why? Maybe Judas misunderstood Jesus. And this was the moment that it kind of, for him in his own head, in his own thinking, it kind of clicked and made sense. Because he misunderstood Jesus. Because Judas believed that Jesus had come to make life better. Judas, maybe like you, had believed that Jesus came to fix issues and fix problems. For Judas, one of the big things was that Jesus was supposed to free them from Roman rule, Roman oppression, the merciless brutality of the Romans. And Jesus was going to judge the enemies, dethrone the emperors, and the kingdom of God would come in. This is what Judas was hoping for. But Jesus didn't come just to fix problems and issues for Judas. No, Jesus came and he said himself, I've come to seek and save those that have got me, God, misunderstood. I've come to be a relationship, to be a bridge to a relationship, a right relationship with God. I've come, Jesus said, to clean out lives from wrong attitudes, wrong thinking, and maybe unkind behaviors. And when Jesus didn't meet Judas's expectations, Matthew records in his gospel, in Matthew 26:16, as we just read, that Judas from that moment saw an opportunity to betray him. You see, I think Judas had made this subconscious deal with Jesus. Have you made a subconscious deal with someone? You know, someone at work, maybe it's a family member. In your head, you've kind of made a deal. You've kind of made this kind of agreement that you've not verbalized, but it's in your head. And I think Judas has made this subconscious deal. He's basically saying, if you do what I want, Jesus, if you fix my problems, if you fix the issues that we're surrounded with in life, then I'll follow you. Then I'll keep trusting you. Then I'll believe you more. Basically, if you get rid of the Romans, I'll follow you. And I think many of us, including me, we've made those subconscious deals with Jesus. We've said things and we've prayed things like, God, I'll follow you if my life improves. I'll trust you if you take care of this situation, if you change it, if you fix it. God, I'll obey you if it doesn't cost me too much. So here's the question. For me, for you, for all of us tonight, do you have a price? Do you have a price? Judas had a price. We've just watched it. Him bartering for the pieces of silver which he finally landed on 30. Judas had a price. You know, I was listening to a song by a Christian artist called Josiah Queen this week. He's wrote some great songs, and one of his songs is simply entitled Judas. And the lyrics are on the screen in this kind of pre-chorus. He says like this, yeah, maybe I'm like Judas, 30 pieces of silver. He ain't worse than me because he betrayed you for money and I did it all for free. See, Jesus had on several occasions, if you've ever read the Bible, if you've opened it up maybe a couple of times, he's told the disciples, his followers on many occasions that, guys, I'm calling you to deny yourself. I'm calling you to prioritize other people and me before you. And he calls it taking up your cross and following him. But for Judas, that just simply, it changed and it was too much of a cost. Because the truth is, for me and for you tonight, the value that we place on Jesus, the importance that we place on Jesus is revealed when following him becomes inconvenient. You see, maybe for you, you've been told a story, hey, listen, if you become a follower of Jesus, you become a Christian, then you'll be blessed and you'll be favored and God's going to take care of all your problems and situations. And you know what? I totally believe that God intervenes with blessings and favor, but being a Christian doesn't mean that life suddenly becomes easy and light and lovely and fluffy all the time. But maybe for some of us, we've got those ideas mixed up and we've kind of gone, hey, and maybe you need to ask questions like, you know, I'm thinking, what sort of blessings do you expect Jesus to give to you? What changes in your life do you expect him to make? I guess, but more importantly, is when those blessings and those changes don't happen, do you walk away and you take matters into your own hands with your own experience, your own thoughts, your own so-called wisdom? Maybe tonight here you've done church for a long time. Maybe you come to Trinity Birmingham regularly. Maybe you've been invited tonight. for the first time, and it's great if you have, and maybe you're here and you do follow Jesus, or you do kind of believe in him, or maybe you've been an avid follower of his for ages, but maybe you still feel a bit stuck. Because I think Judas felt stuck. Maybe you, like Judas, are frustrated with God at times. Maybe you feel like he's not come through for you in the prayers and the hopes and the dreams that you've been waiting for. Maybe you've started to drift. Maybe you're thinking, God, you're not paying attention to me. Maybe you're disappointed with how life has turned out, or this season of life is that it is, and you're thinking, God, where are you in this? I was told to trust you. I was told to pray. I was told to read your Bible. I think I believe. I trust you, but God, I'm just stuck. You see, I don't think Judas left Jesus overnight. I don't think he left Jesus overnight. We see it in a moment. We've seen it in the video that he betrays him in a moment, but I don't think he left him in that moment. I think Judas drifted, then he detached, and then he betrayed. And I, for one, at moments in my life, have definitely drifted. Questioned, thought about, considered, doubted. I've drifted at times. I think at times in my life, I've detached. And maybe you, like Judas and me at times, we've drifted and we've detached. But I want to tell you, the kicker tonight is that Jesus, just like we saw, he looks at Judas, and the last sentence that he utters to Judas starts with the word friend. See, Jesus will always reach out to you. Jesus will always come looking for us. Jesus will always be knocking and saying, hey, I want relationship with you because I want you to have a right relationship with God. I want to bless you. I want to pour favor on your life. I want you to live a purposeful and meaningful life. Friend. And I think that's the most amazing word in this whole betrayal, traitor story tonight that I want you to go home and think about. That Jesus utters the word friend. Do what you have come for. I don't know about this whole idea of betrayal, being a traitor. I love the Claudia Winkleman show. I think it's great. And this is kind of where we got an idea of actually, no, that's really happened, that show. But you know what? I don't think that, and I don't think you would ever go thinking about, you know what? Today, I'm going to betray someone. I don't think you wake up tomorrow morning and go, right, today's the day we're going to betray. Do you? I don't think we wake up thinking like that. And you'd be right, because you know what? Betrayal is hard. Betrayal is hard. Betrayal isn't common. It's not a common thing that us humans do. It's difficult. Because I don't think you've betrayed anyone. You can't betray the local shopkeeper, can you? Like at my house, we've got two shops that I can go and buy anything from. I've got the Spa, and then I've got a shop called Sarah's. If I get bread from Sarah's and I get my milk from the Spa, I don't think either shopkeeper's going, traitor. I can't betray the local shopkeeper. For those of you who got young kids, I don't think you can betray your kid's sports coach. Whether it's the football or it's the netball or the basketball, I don't think, after a session or two, you go, hey, kid, we're going to go to a different club. I don't think the coach is going, Judas! Because betrayal's hard. I don't think you could go to Lidl tomorrow morning to get your hot cross buns and be standing in an aisle, and then suddenly the next aisle opens up and you do like we all do. Oh, brilliant, let's go over here. I don't think the cashier's going to go, bing bong, there's a traitor in aisle 4. It's not going to happen, is it? Why? Because betrayal is hard. Betrayal's not common. Because you can't betray a stranger. You can't betray a stranger. Shopkeeper, sports coach, Lidl cashier. You can't betray a stranger. Because if we put the definition of betrayal on the screen, betrayal is when someone who trusts you, who loves you, who has time for you, who cares for you, who believes in you, someone who calls you friend. That's someone you can betray. And Jesus recorded in the Bible, talking to his disciples one day, says, guys, I don't call you servants, I call you friends. And his final word to Judas was friend. Friend. And yet often, for me included, how often do we choose to maybe ignore Jesus? We kind of keep him at a distance. Sunday morning, yeah, we're close, Jesus, but throughout the week, you're a second thought, third thought. Maybe at times you, like me, we kind of ignored God's calling, God's voice, God's promptings, God's positioning. We ignore it. We push it aside. We go, that'll wait for another day. Maybe we walk away at times from what God wants for us, what he wills for us, what his plans and his purposes that are good for us. And sometimes you, like me, we disobey God, we disobey Jesus, we disobey the one who calls us friend. You could say we betray him, just like Judas. But you know what? There's another key character in the Easter story. Yes, we've talked a lot about Judas tonight, but there's another key character, another guy that is very, he comes up a lot in the Easter story, and you're probably thinking, I know what he's going to say. And that man is Peter. You see, we just associate Judas with betraying Jesus, but I want to suggest that Peter betrayed Jesus too. His betrayal of Jesus looked a little different, felt a little different, was in different environment, but I want to suggest that Peter also failed Jesus, also betrayed Jesus. You see, Matthew 22, Matthew's a great gospel writer, records loads of things. He's there probably with his quill, recording everything that happened. And he says of Peter, records of Peter, that Peter in Matthew 26:33 boldly says, listen guys, if all of you kind of turn your back and fall away from Jesus, I never will. That's what Peter says. But hours later, as you read the Easter story over this weekend one more time, you know that Peter goes on to deny and betray Jesus. Not once, not twice, but 3 times. See, both men failed. Judas, Peter. Both men failed. And both men regretted it. Both men are broken. Both men are despondent. Both men are lost. Both men have run away. But their stories end differently. Their stories end differently. And in John 21, you can read the account that Jesus has been crucified. Jesus has been buried in a tomb. Friday, Saturday. And the boys, Peter and the disciples, they have returned back to their trade that they grew up with. They've gone back to fishing. Because guess what? Jesus is dead. Hope is over. The story's ended. And what are we going to do? We just have to go back to what we did before. And they go back to fishing. But on resurrection morning, on the Sunday morning, when Jesus resurrects and defeats sin and he defeats death, the disciples are fishing one time and Jesus appears to them on the beach a couple of days after. The boys thinking it's over. The boys returning to fishing. And Jesus returns not with anger, not with frustration, not with rejection, but with breakfast. And in John 21, you can read it in verses between 9 and 14. Jesus sits with them, eats with them, welcomes them. No resentment, no bitterness, just grace and smoked kippers. And in verses 15 to 9, he looks at Peter, who is with the gang, the one who's betrayed him, that he's having breakfast with. And he asks him 3 questions. 3 questions that kind of mirror the 3 denials that Peter had done the previous few days. And he looks at Peter, who's about to take a mouthful of baked beans. And he says, do you love me? Do you love me? Do you love me? And Peter's response is, yes, yes, yes. And Jesus goes on to anoint and call Peter and says, feed my sheep, tend my lambs. In other words, you guys are about to birth what the world is going to call the church. The greatest movement of people that this world will ever know, that will do immense things, great things, good things, that will do kind things, generous things, that will show loyalty and compassion and help to those people who are marginalized, disadvantaged, and unfortunate. The greatest movement that was about to be born started with Peter, who had betrayed Jesus a few days earlier. I want to tell you, church, as the band come and join me, as we finish our service and then go and have a great supper next door, that for every denial that you and I, for every walk away, for every kind of prayer that we've just then gone, nah, there is an invitation. That Jesus would invite us back into a relationship, in a friendship. That for every failure, for every thought that we've wrongly thought, for every action that we are regretting, there is a restoration. Why? Because Jesus forgives. Jesus restores. And that's the difference between Judas and Peter. You see, Judas sadly failed and betrayed Jesus and ran away. And was filled with so much remorse, the Bible tells us. He was so sorry for what he had done that he couldn't handle the depth of emotion and pain that he was feeling, that the Bible tells us that he took his life. And Peter, having betrayed Jesus, full of remorse, feeling lost, feeling dejected, feeling so upset with himself, comes back to Jesus. You see, Judas, he just probably couldn't accept the grace and the renewed relationship that Jesus would have offered him. Jesus would have offered Judas a new start, you know. But Peter, he humbles himself. He says, Jesus, forgive me for what I said, for what I did. I want to be in a right friendship and relationship with you. I trust you. I believe you. I love you. I believe that you've got a great plan and a purpose for my life, and I want to put my life in your hands and trust you. I know that your words and your ways are good for my life. And Judas, eating breakfast with Jesus, was restored in that moment. And maybe you're here tonight. Maybe you've been invited. Maybe you're a long time attender here, but maybe you don't consider yourself a true follower of Jesus. Maybe you don't consider yourself a Christian. You might think like Peter and like Judas did, listen, I've gone too far. I've done some things that Simon, you should never even know about. I've said some awful things to people. I've mixed things in the rumour mill. I've done some stuff that I just don't think was great, but God can't handle that. I want to tell you tonight, God can handle it. Because if he can handle Peter, he can handle you. If he can handle Judas, he can handle me. You see, Romans 5 verse 8 is a great verse in the Bible. It simply says this. It says, God shows his love for us in that while we were still sinners, Christ died for you. Christ died for me. And I want to encourage you tonight that verse, let that ring true in your heart over this weekend. that while we were still sinners, that while we still mess up, that while we still make mistakes, that while we still behave and react and respond in ways that probably aren't great at times, Christ died for you.